was a gloomy Friday afternoon, the kind where the sky hangs low like a heavy blanket, and even the fluorescent lights in our classrooms feel dimmer. I was in Mr. Langston's algebra class, drowsily watching the hands of the clock creep toward 3 p.m. when the school's PA system crackled to life. This is not a drill. Lockdown. I repeat, this is not a drill. There was something off about the voice. It wasn't Principal Halverson's usual sharp bark. This voice was distant, echoey, almost like it was being transmitted through an old radio. Mr. Langston dropped his chalk. It hit the floor and rolled under the radiator. He quickly locked the classroom door, drew the blinds, and motioned for us to gather in the designated corner, the usual routine. I'd been through a dozen of these drills since middle school. We all had. But the air in the room felt different, stale, electric, like something ancient had just stirred. We sat huddled, 25 of us packed like sardines behind a barricade of desks and backpacks. The silence was thick, every creak of the building magnified. I could hear the hum of the overhead lights, the nervous breathing of my classmates. And then again, the PA system crackled. Cameron White, proceed to room 306. Heads turned in sync. Cameron was sitting right next to me, his face paling in real time. He gave a nervous laugh at first, then stopped when no one else joined in. "Stay seated," Mr. Langston said sharply. "Nobody moves." Cameron fidgeted in place. I think they want me to go. Maybe it's something serious." "No," Mr. Langston said, his voice shaking. "We're in lockdown. That means you don't leave this room." But Cameron was already standing. I reached for his sleeve, but he gently pulled away, looking dazed. "It's fine," he whispered. "I'll be right back." He walked to the door with a strange calmness, like he was being led by something unseen. Before anyone could stop him, he slid the lock open, stepped outside, and shut the door with a final sounding click. We waited. 1 minute, 2, 10. Mr. Langston crept to the door and peered through the narrow glass slit. His brow furrowed. He turned back. "He's gone." The silence became suffocating. A girl started crying quietly. I checked my phone. No signal, no Wi-Fi. Not even a flicker of hope from the emergency SOS function. Then the PA click-hit again. "Ana Reyes, proceed to room 306. Anna whimpered. She shook her head violently, covering her ears. "I don't want to go, please." "You won't," Mr. Langston said, stepping in front of the door. We started whispering among ourselves. I pulled out my phone again, still nothing. It was more than just a lockdown. The air felt charged, unnatural. Marcus, the goth kid, always in a black hoodie and dog-eared horror novels, leaned in. "There is no room 306. "What?" He pointed at the evacuation map posted next to the whiteboard. "Room 306 doesn't exist. This building only goes to room 304. A chill traced down my spine. "They rebuilt that whole wing 20 years ago," Marcus continued. "There was a fire. My cousin was a junior here back then. He said they closed that hallway permanently." The implications started to settle like cold fog. If 306 didn't exist, where were they being taken? Mr. Langston looked pale now, beads of sweat forming at his temple. More names came over the speaker. "Logan Kessler, proceed to room 306. Brian Gentry, proceed to room 306. Each time, a student rose like they were in a trance. Their movements were slow, deliberate, mechanical. We pleaded, grabbed at sleeves, begged them to stay. But once their name was called, something compelled them to go. Each of them vanished into the hallway. Soon we were 15, then 12. Someone tried barricading the door with a metal filing cabinet. Another girl was praying softly under her breath, clutching a silver cross. I found myself rifling through the supply closet, my mind racing for answers. That's when I spotted the stack of old yearbooks coated in dust. I flipped through one from 1997. My stomach twisted into a knot. Cameron White, Anna Reyes, Brian Gentry, all pictured in the junior class section. The exact same names. They were students here, 20 years ago. Marcus nodded grimly. They died in that fire. It's not a lockdown. It's a roll call. The room dimmed. The lights flickered, buzzing with erratic energy. The heater kicked on, but instead of warmth, a cold draft swept across the floor. The temperature was dropping. Then the PA came alive again. Evan Carter, proceed to room 306. That was my name. My blood ran cold. Everyone turned to look at me. My heart pounded against my ribs like it wanted to escape. I backed up, clutching the edge of a desk. Don't say it, Marcus hissed. Don't acknowledge it. But I could feel it. Something behind the walls. Something in the air. It was aware of me now. A subtle pressure in my ears, like being underwater. Faint whispers began to echo in the vents. Names, sobs, a low chant I couldn't understand. I tried to steady myself. My grandfather's voice surfaced in my memory. He'd worked as a custodian here in the 90s. Once he told me the PA system had been rebuilt using salvaged parts from the old burnt-down wing. They ran the wiring through the old basement tunnels, he had said. Places that weren't meant to be connected. Something clicked. The system wasn't just broken, it was a bridge. It's feeding off memory, I whispered aloud. Off the names. If we forget them, maybe we stop it. Mr. Langston looked at me like I was insane, but I had to try. I tore the yearbook from the desk and dragged it to the chalkboard. I began writing down every name that had been called. Cameron, Anna, Logan, Brian. Then slowly, one by one, I erased them. You can't erase the dead, Mr. Langston said, his voice distant, hollow. But if they live through memory, I said, maybe we can unremember them. Starve it. The chalk snapped in my fingers, but I kept erasing. The whispers in the walls grew louder. A howl erupted through the vents. Lights exploded above us with a loud pop. The PA system screeched, then fell into silence. Total crushing darkness. We huddled together, not daring to move or speak. The silence stretched until it became unbearable. Somewhere in that thick silence, I swear I heard footsteps above us, on the roof, or maybe beneath us, deep below in the tunnels. A dragging sound, wet, heavy. And then a single sentence over the PA, distorted and cracked. We remember what you forget. Then it cut out completely. Hours later, the power came back. The hallway was quiet. Nothing seemed to miss, except for the empty desks around us, the ones belonging to the taken. When we finally left the classroom, emergency services were waiting. They claimed it had been a systems glitch. A few files corrupted. A test gone wrong. But those students, gone. No record, no photos, not even listed in the attendance system anymore. Like they never existed. And yet I remember. I write their names down every night. Then I erase them. Again and again. Because I know the PA will speak again. And I know it remembers me. It was supposed to be just another late detention. Friday, 4:12 p.m. The halls of Gallowmere High were empty, the fluorescent lights flickering like lazy fireflies. The silence after hours was always a little unsettling. Echoes hung too long. Shadows lingered where they shouldn't. But I was used to it by now. I'd spent enough afternoons serving detention for stupid stuff. Late homework, missing gym gear, skipping assemblies. This time, I got caught vaping in the bathroom. Again. Mrs. Porter, the vice principal, gave me that usual disappointed sigh and told me to report to room 113 after the final bell. But when I got there, the door was locked, lights off. I was about to bail when I saw it. A printed sign taped just above the doorknob, written in Sharpie. Detention moved to hallway 13, room 13. I frowned. Hallway 13? That didn't sound familiar. I'd been at Gallimere for 3 years, and I'd never once heard of a hallway 13. Our school wasn't that big. We had 4 main wings, A through D, and none of them went up to 13 rooms. The highest I remembered was room 11B in the science hall. But the sign looked official. School letterhead, time-stamped, even initialed by Mrs. Porter. So I shrugged, shoved my hands in my hoodie, and set off down the corridor. As I walked past the art hallway, I noticed how quiet everything felt. Not just quiet, dead. No humming from vending machines, no janitor whistling down the hall, no distant clatter from the gym, just nothing. Eventually, I reached the end of Wing D, where the trophy cases gathered dust and the tiles lost their shine. There was an old steel door at the end, marked with a crooked sign that read, "Maintenance." Except now, below it, someone had taped a newer sign in bold black ink, Hallway 13. I hesitated. The air smelled like mildew and cold stone. But I pushed the door open. The hallway beyond wasn't like the rest of the school. The floor tiles were cracked and discolored. The walls faded yellow like old teeth. Flickering bulbs buzzed in steel cages overhead, casting long, jittery shadows. And the worst part? It was cold. Freezing. My breath fogged up as I walked. I followed the signs. Room 13, 13B, 13C. When I reached 13C, I noticed the door was slightly ajar. The room was dim, lit only by a single desk lamp in the far corner. Dust floated in the air like ash. And sitting behind the teacher's desk was a man I'd never seen before. Pale, thin, wearing an old Gallimere faculty badge. His eyes never blinked. "Have a seat, Mr. Grayson," he said without even looking up. I froze. "How do you know my name?" He didn't answer, just pointed to the only desk in the center of the room. I sat. Time passed slowly. The man didn't move, didn't speak, just stared at a thick leather book on his desk, turning pages one by one with bony fingers. Then the clock ticked 4:44. He looked up at me. "You don't belong here," he said. I blinked. "Then what?" "You've walked into a memory," he said softly. "And memories don't let go easily." The lights flickered. A low groan echoed from down the hallway. I stood up. "Okay, I'm out." "No," he said. "Not yet." Suddenly the door slammed shut behind me, locked. The bulb overhead exploded and the room plunged into darkness, save for the glow of his lamp. Then, the whispers started. Faint at first. Dozens of voices overlapping, pleading, crying, chanting. The substitute, or whatever he was, stood and walked to the blackboard. With chalk, he wrote 3 words. "Roll call begins." Then he read aloud. "Emily Hart, room 13C." Somewhere outside the door, a scream rang out, high, piercing, then abruptly cut off. I backed toward the wall, heart racing. "What is this?" He kept reading. "Malik Jennings, room 13C." Another scream, closer. I ran to the window, but instead of the school courtyard, all I saw was endless, pitch-black fog pressing against the glass. Nothing outside. Not even reflection. Laura Benite's, room 13C. This time, the scream was just outside the door. I grabbed a chair and slammed it into the glass. It bounced off. Not even a crack. Then the whisper stopped. The man turned to me, eyes like burned-out coals. "You weren't called," he said. "Yet here you are. I thought this was detention." "This is where the forgotten go," he said. "Hallway 13 was sealed after the fire in 1986. Room 13C burned for 13 minutes. No survivors, only names." I shook my head, terrified. "But this is just a prank, right? Some creepy school legend." He opened the leather book. My photo stared back at me. Senior ID, same hoodie, same scowl, but below it written in smeared ink, "Grayson Miles, detained, 4:44 p.m. I turned and ran for the door. It opened. But the hallway was wrong now. Longer, twisted. The doors were gone, replaced by old portraits. Faded student faces stared at me from cracked frames. Some smiled, others looked frozen in terror. And one by one they whispered, "We stayed too long." I ran, barely able to breathe. The hallway seemed to stretch endlessly. Doors appeared, then vanished. Some opened to pitch darkness, others to old flickering memories. A girl crying in a locker room, a boy banging on a locked exit. Finally, I stumbled into a stairwell. A sign above it read, "Exit only if forgotten." I didn't understand, but I pushed down the stairs anyway. The deeper I went, the colder it got. Then on the 4th floor underground, yes, underground, I saw it. A door labeled 13X. It pulsed like a heartbeat. Shadows leaked from its edges. Voices echoed behind me. The roll call. "Grayson Miles, room 13C. "No," I screamed. The door creaked open. Inside was a mirror. And in that mirror, I saw myself, older, hollow-eyed, sitting in the same desk in 13C, still serving detention. For years. Alone. I turned to run, but the door slammed shut. I woke up in the janitor's closet, shivering, covered in dust and ash. It was Monday. They told me I'd been missing all weekend. My parents were frantic. Police searched everywhere. They found no hallway 13. No room 13. And Mrs. Porter? She never signed a detention slip. In fact, she'd been out sick all week. They called it a fugue state, stress-induced hallucination. But I know what I saw. Because this morning, when I opened my locker, a folded paper fell out. No name. Just one line written in Sharpie. Detention moved to hallway 13, room 13C. It all began the day Mrs. Caldwell didn't show up. She was our history teacher, a strict woman with a dry wit, who could recite dates and names like a machine, but always made history feel alive, almost like a story being whispered down generations. But one Monday morning, she didn't come to class. School announced she was ill, though nobody knew what. Maybe a cold or something worse, but the details were scarce. She never returned. Instead, they sent us a substitute, Mr. Eddings. The moment he walked into room 207, the atmosphere shifted. The door creaked open, and a tall man in a sharp black suit entered. His clothes looked outdated, like something out of a black and white movie. His tie was narrow and faded, the kind you'd expect from the 1950s. His pale, almost translucent eyes scanned the room, making me shiver. He carried no textbooks or laptop, just an old leather-bound journal, worn and cracked, like it had survived decades. "Good morning, class," he said in a low, even voice that seemed to echo slightly as if he were speaking through a tunnel, "I will be your guide through history until your regular teacher returns." There was no warmth in his smile, no smile really. Just a faint, unsettling curve of the lips. From the first lesson, I knew this wouldn't be ordinary. We were used to history being about kings, wars, dates, facts that lined the pages of textbooks and filled slideshows. But Mr. Eddings read to us from that ancient journal, telling stories no one had heard before. Tales of forgotten people, places erased from maps, events never recorded in any official record. He spoke of things that felt unreal, phantoms of time, shadows of memories no one else had. History, he told us one day, is not what is written in books. It is what we remember, and sometimes what we forget. His words sunk in like a stone. At first, we thought it was just a strange teaching method, an eccentric man with a penchant for dark stories. But then things started to get odd. Jamie was the first to disappear. Jamie was the funny kid, always cracking jokes and making us laugh even during the dullest classes. One day after lunch, he vanished. No one saw him leave school, and he didn't come to any of his afternoon classes. We searched the halls, the bathrooms, even outside, but Jamie was gone. His locker was untouched, his phone silent. The school said he was absent. His parents claimed they hadn't heard from him. But something about it didn't feel right. Then Lisa vanished. And after that, Marco, one by one, students went missing. Each disappearance was sudden, no warnings, no explanations. And the worst part? It was always during Mr. Eddings' class. We whispered behind closed doors, eyes wide with fear. Nobody dared say it aloud, but I think we all knew who was behind it. One rainy afternoon, the lights in room 207 flickered violently. A cold breeze swept through the room, despite the windows being shut tight. The air tasted metallic, thick with something unseen. Mr. Eddings smiled, a slow, cruel smile that sent a chill down my spine. "History demands a sacrifice," he said quietly. "For stories to live, they must be told. For you to remember, others must be forgotten." The class fell silent. I wanted to believe it was just a metaphor, a twisted joke, but my gut told me otherwise. I watched him more closely from then on. His footsteps were too quiet, as if he didn't quite touch the floor. His shadow never moved quite right. It stretched and twisted behind him like smoke. Sometimes when he stood still, I thought I saw him flicker like a broken hologram. I needed answers. So one day I stayed after school, hiding behind lockers. I waited for him to leave. When the halls cleared, I followed. He moved down the dim corridors with a purpose, heading toward the old auditorium, an abandoned relic covered in peeling paint and dust. The heavy door groaned open, and I slipped inside. The auditorium was empty except for the stage, where a single candle flickered, casting long shadows. On the stage were rows of photographs, old, faded pictures of students and teachers, faces frozen in time. In the center lay the open journal. Its pages glowed faintly, the ink shifting and changing as I watched. I bent closer, scanning the text. It was a list. Names, dates, notes. Jamie, Lisa, Marco. Each marked, consumed. A voice hissed from the darkness. "Why do you seek the forgotten?" I whipped around. Mr. Eddings stood there, eyes glowing faintly white. "You cannot stop the story," he whispered. "The chapters are already written." I tried to run, but my legs wouldn't obey. The photographs' faces twisted, mouths opening in silent screams, eyes hollow and accusing. He moved closer, voice cold as ice. "To live in history, one must be remembered. To be remembered, others must be erased. I screamed. Then everything went black. I woke outside the school gates the next morning. The sky was gray and heavy with mist. My classmates were gathered, faces blank, avoiding my gaze. Nobody mentioned the missing students. It was as if they never existed. But I knew. That night, I found my own photo in the journal, marked with today's date. I was next. The days that followed became a waking nightmare. I couldn't escape the feeling that Mr. Eddings was always watching. His pale eyes burned into me every time I stepped into room 207. Classmates stopped speaking to me. They looked through me like I was already fading. Teachers seemed nervous when I mentioned Jamie or Lisa quickly changing the subject. No one wanted to talk about what was happening. One evening, I dug through old yearbooks in the school library, desperate for answers. I found photos of the students who had disappeared. Jamie, Lisa, Marco, all from answers. I found photos of the students who had disappeared. Jamie, Lisa, Marco, all from decades ago. The faces matched perfectly. The journal was no ordinary book. It was a ledger of souls. The more I learned, the more I understood. Mr. Eddings wasn't just a substitute teacher. He was a collector, a warden of forgotten stories. He fed on memories, on the act of remembering itself. Every student he took was added to the book, their existence erased from the present, swallowed by history. The school was a trap, a loop where the forgotten repeated forever. I realized there was only one way to survive: to forget. To let go of memories, to erase myself from their story. But how? Desperation drove me to confront him. I stayed late one night, waiting in the shadows outside room 207. When he arrived, I stepped forward. "Why are you doing this?" I demanded. He smiled that cruel smile again. "History must be preserved," he said. "But preservation comes at a price." "I won't be a part of your story," I said. He tilted his head. "You already are." With that, he reached out, and everything blurred. I was back in the auditorium, surrounded by those twisted photographs. The candle flickered and went out. Darkness swallowed me whole. When I woke, I was back in the classroom. The journal lay open on the desk, waiting. I grabbed it, the pages trembling beneath my fingers. If I was to escape this nightmare, I had to rewrite the story. I began to write my own name into the journal. But not as a victim, as a storyteller. I wrote about the truth, about Mr. Eddings, about the vanished students, about the endless cycle of forgetting and remembering. Words spilled out like a river breaking a dam. With every sentence, the classroom seemed to lighten, the shadows retreating. Mr. Eddings appeared one last time. "You think you can change history?" "I'm not changing it," I said. "I'm breaking the cycle." The journal glowed, pages tearing and burning. Faces in the photographs cried out, freed from their silent prison. Light flooded the room, then silence. Aftermath. I don't know what happened next. The next morning, room 207 was empty. No sign of Mr. Eddings. No journal. And the missing students? They were back. Jamie laughed at lunch again. Lisa and Marco walked the halls like nothing had changed. I wasn't sure if it was a dream or if I had really freed them. But one thing was clear. History wasn't just about remembering. It was about who controls the story. And I had finally taken back the pen.